All right, friends, welcome back. Today we are talking about Bill 21. So, Quebec, you just voted Bill 21. Now, I understand both sides of the story in this one. So, we're going to cover that today. And I'm also going to give my opinion on what we should have done instead of passing Bill 21. And I'm going to cover as well some reactions to Bill 21 from the Muslim community. And I'm not singling them out. They singled themselves out by gathering and protesting. And so I'm going to do that. And also the fear mongering out of the CBC. CBC, you're known for that now. So we're going to cover all of that today, and you might be surprised by my opinion on Bill 21, especially if you've been following my channel. So without further ado, here we go.
We can't simply put our identity on a shelf and come to our jobs. No, whether I wore my hijab or not, I'm still the same teacher.
Now, Bill 21, what is this? What is this mess? What is this controversy coming out of the province of Quebec, which is always controversial. Everything Quebec does, Quebec's so controversial. I could say that. I'm from Quebec. I grew up there. Love the province. I'm a little bit sad that I'm in Ontario now, because the culture is very different, and I'm truly Quebecer at heart. So I struggle. The struggle is real. So anyways, okay, Bill 21 out of this controversial Quebec is essentially a bill that was passed, and it was majority voted. And what happened is the government of Quebec said when people work for us, for the government, and they're in a position of authority, so they consider that they have provided state authority to that person, well, now Quebec is saying that person should not be wearing religious symbols. The reason is Quebec has decided about 50 years ago to divorce from the Catholic Church, which was very dominant in Quebec, and they've decided to adopt a secularism model. So that means the government is free of any authority of any form of religion. So initially it was to be free from the Catholics, but with the multiculturalism that has risen within Quebec and now the presence of multi-religions, Quebec has still said, you know what, we want to remain independent of all that. We're a state and we're not a religion, so we don't want any religious group to be part of that. Now, Bill 21 is actually saying that when you work for the government, you can't show what religion you're from. So that's essentially what it is. It's very simple. And as part of me disagrees with this law, but part of me also agrees with it. So I'm very, very torn between the two worlds because I can see both sides. And let me explain that to you today. The side of the government, the people who voted for this, the people who wanted this, I completely understand that side as well, because we want to protect what's truly the culture in Quebec. And when you're a Quebecer and you go to get your driver's license renewed, you want to go there and have an experience that is not engulfed in this foreign religion to you, right? So you would have remnants of Catholicism within your blood, but now because of all these cultures coming into Quebec, you go there, you see somebody with a hijab, you see somebody with a Jewish kippah, and you might think, oh my gosh, like this isn't a Quebecer, like this isn't part of the Quebec culture. So this is why this bill is in effect right now, because a lot of Quebecers are concerned that what they know, the Quebec that they know, is slowly slipping away. And I completely get that, because there is one Quebec. There's only one Quebec, that's it. But yet when you think about the other religions, if you talk about Islam, there's 50, Islam is Muslims, by the way. So if you're Muslim, you have 57 other countries you could go to that have a Muslim majority in them. If you're Jewish, you have the state of Israel you could go to. But where would you go if you're Quebec? That is it. This is it. You have that chunk of land, and that is it. And half of it doesn't even count because it's like frozen over for all year. So it's really smaller than you would think in Quebec. And you want to make sure you protect that. And that I completely understand. This is why they've had their French laws in effect for so long. Yesterday was the Saint Jean Baptiste, which is a big party in Quebec, and that was a big deal. They are protecting that. I completely get that. So if you're an immigrant and you come to Quebec and you learn French and you celebrate Saint Jean Baptiste and you have the flag on your face, you know, they paint the flag on their cheeks, Saint Jean Baptiste, you go to Cabane à Sucre in March with everybody and you do la gigue, you know, when you dance like a Quebecer, that is perfectly fine. Quebecers will always welcome immigrants who come and integrate. The problem is Quebec perceives the religious symbols as non-integration. And it's one thing when you practice that at home, but when it's in society and provided to you by a member of that works for the government, it's a whole different story. So I understand that side of Quebec, why this bill is necessary in order to protect the Quebec culture and to make Quebecers feel like they're still in the province of Quebec. Now, the other side, and this is the part that I don't like. So I'm not offended that it takes out the religious symbols because that's the part I kind of agree with. But what I don't like is now we have a government. We're in a scenario again where we have a government dictating to people what not to wear. And that means we're one step away from the government dictating to people what to wear. And from there, it can be what to think. And you know, you can see how it can escalate. And this is what we've seen in many of the authoritarian governments in the past. So I find that Bill 21 is on this slippery slope in Quebec. And I don't know how to interpret that. Like, imagine if this got into the hands of like really evil people in the government. They could really do a lot of damage with all of this. They could escalate the penalties from just simply being fired to imprisonment. This is a very slippery slope, and all of that because you wore your hijab to work or you wore your cross to work, right? And you work for the government. So I don't like that part. I don't like that the government has codified it within its laws that these certain ways that you can dress are allowed. So it's funny because there's no law in Quebec that says you can't wear a Nazi symbol, right? Like there's none of that, but yet there's a law now that says you can't wear a hijab. So to me, that's a little bit of a dangerous path to go down. I think it's a very short-sighted path. I know Quebec's been working on this for 10 years now, but in my opinion, it's short-sighted because I think in order to have had more of a broader view, in order to protect Quebec from outside influence, I think really the most important thing to do is to protect your borders. So there was Roxham Road where people were just crossing nilly-willy. Hey, want to go to Canada? Yeah, just enter here, Quebec, not secured. Oh, RCMP, they're going to come down and they're going to actually carry your luggage for you. This is what happened in Quebec for more than 2 years now. And I wish that would have been sealed. Seal the border, protect the people, protect the laws, and don't spend taxpayer money on people that shouldn't be here in the first place. It's a whole different ballgame when you have a legal immigrant who went through the proper everything, the proper path, and they are here and they've paid their dues and they work and they've integrated and they've learned French. Quebec is, like I said before, always love that. But in this scenario, this is where the problem is. So instead of dealing with the actual reality, they're kind of like making up problems. This is what I find. I find Bill 21 is making up. They're making problems. They're creating problems where there wasn't any before. I don't know were there any complaints that people were wearing hijabs at work? Like, I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to preempt it, or I don't really fully see. The only reason that I could find when I was researching it is that there is a need to protect the secularism of the government. So if you know of any other reason, let me know in the comments. I'll cover that. Anyways, okay. So now that we've gone through both sides of the argument, what I find really interesting and very telling is the reaction of the Muslims. So I have a few articles that I'm going to link below, but one of them is actually called "After Quebec's Secularism Law, Muslim Women Gathered to Figure Out What Can We Do Now." Very telling, because what is happening here is they are fighting Quebec law and showing non-integration by that. So Quebec didn't say all of you women can't wear the hijab. They just said the women who work for the government, who are funded by taxpayers, cannot wear the hijab. That's essentially all it is. So these women seem to be blowing it a little bit out of proportion, to be honest. And actually, let me show you another part of the article where it's like you're talking about blowing this out of proportion when you see things like this. So they're considering, so the whole article, they're talking about, well, how can we fight this law? So not, okay, well, how do we adjust ourselves so that we fit into Quebec society, but how do we fight the law that the Quebec people want to have in place? This to me is indicative of non-integration, and it's very, very clear to me. We knew that. I knew that. I knew Muslims are not here to integrate, but I'm hoping more people see that now. But it says here, they're considering self-defense. So can you imagine self-defense? Like, talk about fear-mongering, CBC. I mean, come on, CBC, you deserve a slap on the wrist for that one. Maybe a timeout or something, because this is so ridiculous. Self-defense. So you're saying, this is again contradictions. The Muslims keep telling us how they're being attacked with Islamophobic crimes and thought crimes and hate crimes and all that stuff all the time because they wear the hijab. Now we're saying to them, take off your hijab, and they're like, oh, now I need self-defense courses. Like, it makes no sense at all. Like, this is ridiculous. It's like they are just trying to find a way to make Muslims appear as more of a victim than they actually are. This is the CBC. So it's so ridiculous. I don't even know what to say on that one. Just such a blatant contradiction. But there is another part where it is a little bit more, you can see a little bit more of what they're thinking, and this is where it's very important. They go about how you can be Muslim and you can be feminist. So again, what does this have to do with Bill 21? This is an article on Bill 21, right? The secularism law. And they say we can be Muslim and feminist. It has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. It's like there's like a autistic writer in the room or something, and like interjecting all these words. And this is nothing against autistic people. I've been around them, and sometimes you'll be talking about something and they'll interject something really, really weird, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what it feels like, right? It's nothing against autism, okay? People, don't go hating me for that. I'm just saying it's the exact same kind of scenario where you're talking about something and then somebody throws a curveball about something, you're not even talking about it. Oh, anyways, okay, so I'm gonna try to find for you guys this part where it says, later in the article, it says the consequences can only be absurd. So now this is where the Muslims who are part of this group are pointing out that the religious symbol really only applies more to Christian cross than the hijab, because now they're saying the hijab is a cultural practice. So I don't know if you guys remember all the times where the Muslims have told us that the reason they have to wear their hijab at work and in the street and in the everywhere that they go is because it's their religious obligation. They choose to, it's their religion. It's my religion, right? Is that the new cool thing to say? My religion. It's my religion. This is what I have to do. And now all of a sudden we're like, okay. Quebec goes, yeah, yo, that's religious symbol. And now they're like, oh, no, this is not a religious symbol. This is cultural. I find it hilarious. Like really, you're just going to change it all of a sudden because it suits. This is directly in line with how the leftist brain works. The leftist brain will have like blatant contradictions in front of it, and they'll still be able to justify both. It's absolutely insane. So which one is it? And Muslims, if you're watching this, tell me, is this cultural or is this religion? I already know it's religion. I know your prophet told you to wear the hijab, and it's in your Quran. But I want to see what you're going to tell me about this, because a lot of Muslims don't seem to realize it's a religious practice. It's mandated. And by the way, let me say this here. Under Islam, there is no distinction between religion and politics. It is one. Islam is one doctrine that encompasses everything. Most of it is derived from religious practice, and they've codified that part into law. That's why you hear the Sharia. Sharia is the codified laws derived from the Quran and the Hadith, and this is what they use as their legal system and their political system. So Islam is one. And in the West, we have slowly come to talk about religious Islam and political Islam. And this is only a concept that happens in the West. That if you talk to any Muslim country, there is no distinction between the two. But in the West, the reason we do that is because we're trying to differentiate between the Muslims who simply go and practice their religion at home and don't try to impose any of the religious laws on the rest of society, versus the people who do that. And we call those people the people who practice political Islam. Political Islam are the ones who are trying to impose Islam on the rest of society. So in the West, political Islam, religious Islam is two different things, but that's only in the West. In the Muslim world is only Islam. It's Islam, and that's it. That's it. It's really not hard to understand. I don't understand why the Muslims don't get this. But anyways, okay. So there we go. We have this whole article about these women getting together and talking about this, and again, bringing conflicting elements to the surface, contradicting what they've said to us in the past. I find it hilarious. And the CBC is, of course, trying to portray victims, Muslims as more victims. So they're always a victim, and now they're a victim of Bill 21. Not everybody, just mostly the Muslims. And this is what they're trying to portray. If you've seen any articles specifically only about the Jewish community or the Sikh community, let me know. But anyways, I've only seen articles about either all groups together or only Muslims. I haven't seen the other ones. Another article from the CBC, and this is probably the most fear-mongering I've seen in a while. The actual title is "Absurdity and Cruelty Come Together in One New Quebec Law." Dum dum dum. It's like super dramatic. Like you should have like really dramatic music with like thunder when you read this kind of article. This is what it makes me think of. So okay. This article, you can read it, also going to be linked in the description. Have fun with all this reading I'm sending your way. I've read them all, and this is really funny because they're talking about how bad this whole thing is. And what I find really funny is we don't talk about the absurdity within Islam, right? We don't talk about that. We only talk about Quebec's new law is absurd and cruel. Now, it's not absurd. It's derived in it's operational in reality, therefore cannot be absurd or have any absurd moments about it. And also, it's not cruel. It's not a cruel law. It discriminates against everybody who's religious. That's not cruel. That's maybe insensitive, maybe annoying. Maybe you wish you could wear your symbols like that at work, but sucks for you. You work for the government. Go work in the private sector. You can wear whatever you want in the private sector. But it's neither absurd nor cruel, this new law. Cruel. Like, okay, you want to talk about cruel? Let's talk about Sharia. What does Sharia do? Sharia, if you're caught stealing, they will cut your hand. If you cause mischief in the land, so what I do right now, opposing Islam, it's considered to be mischief in the land if I was in an Islamic country. And they might do anything from imprisonment to cutting my hand and my foot from opposite sides, crucify me. If you're gay, they're going to throw you from the tallest building. They'll kill you no matter what. Like if they can't find a tall building, they're gonna stone you, or they're gonna just chop your head off. But if you're gay, it's death penalty. If you leave Islam, it's death penalty. And this is all Quran. This is not even hadith or even like just folklore. This is actual Islamic doctrine. So if you look at the Islamic history, that is what they do, and that's how they've codified their own laws. So you want to talk about cruel laws? Let's look at something that's really cruel, not this Quebec law. Socialism is equally cruel. Those are cruel laws. When you have socialist laws that come into effect, those are also cruel. I'm not just picking on Muslims here, and it's not even Muslims, it's Islam. But okay, let's get back to Bill 21 and what could have been done. The reason I find this is short-sighted is because all it achieves for right now is cause more controversy around the province of Quebec, and it makes it so that it allows all these group victims to happen, to pop up and to complain. And I don't think that's productive or conducive to any form of solution. I think that if they would have guaranteed freedom of speech, that's where the gold is for Quebec. Ontario, we're losing our freedom of speech. Quebec, I think, is not as bad. Quebecers are a very honest, open people. I think it'd be very hard to take it away from them, but still not impossible. But that's where you need to put all of your money, is in the freedom of speech. If you lose freedom of speech, you have nothing. It'll be the end. It'll be the end. All of these little things, religious symbols, will be tiny, tiny parts of this whole big scheme once we've lost religion, freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, that's where you have to put all of your efforts in defending. Defend the freedom of speech. I think that if, like, for example, I have the right to speak out against Islam, if you take that right away from me, that's where I'm going to run into issues, because what I'm doing now is I'm exposing to a lot of people in Canada who don't necessarily know what Islam is. I'm telling them what it is. Even Muslims in Canada, they have no idea about Islam. I tell them what their prophet said. And this is where we have a chance of making a true difference. I think by having Muslims in the West exposed to what their religion really is, and especially the third, fourth generation Muslims here, they've really been westernized, and they've had a taste of what it is to live in a free land, to have assets, to have a house, to have freedom of association. They've experienced the wealth that we have in Canada. They've experienced all of this, and it's going to be very hard for them to have to go back to Islam and follow those. Islam is a 7th century doctrine. It is neither sophisticated enough to operate in the 21st century, nor is it kind enough for a democracy. It's entirely incompatible and barbaric. And this is where in democracies we've actually given rights to children, we have given rights to women. Islam is not there. It is still in the 7th century, the way Muhammad left it. This is how it is. So if we tell Muslims what their religion truly is, they're going to start coming out of it, and they're going to be our allies. So this is why I always say, don't go after the Muslims. It's really not all the Muslims. You never know. You could have a hijabi next to you at work, and she wants to leave Islam, or she's already left Islam. She just has family that is pressuring her, so she's stuck. That's where the true battle is going to be. The true battle is within freedom of speech. So, long video. Hope you stuck with me to the end. And I will link all the articles I talked about today. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I always look forward to reading those. And I will see everybody in the next one.
It's a very important day today, and what I want to try to do in the next few weeks is to unite as many Quebecers as possible. That's why we accepted to make compromises, but I'm very proud of the bill we tabled today, and I think it represents values, our values, and it's important.